Alright, so whenever there is a number in front of the x squared, there's a little bit more process in order to factor. It's not just looking at it and knowing what the answer is like we did on Friday. Okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to start off by multiplying the first number and the last number together. So 2 times 3 is 6. Then you're going to write down the factors of 6. So we've got a 1 and a 6, and we got a 2 and a 3. Now, 2 times 3 was a positive 6. So because it's positive, I'm wanting to add the two numbers to give me 5. And that's important because both of these numbers give me 5. If I do 6 minus 1, I get 5. If I do 2 plus 3, I get 5. But we're wanting to add it because we have a positive. So that means that 2 and 3 are the numbers that I'm looking at. So far, you multiply the first number and the last number together, and then you still find the things that add or subtract to give you that. Okay? The difference is that you're going to take this number in the middle, it says 5x, you're going to replace it with those two numbers you've decided add to give you that. So instead of a 5x, we're going to put 2x and 3x. Okay? So we're going to put 2x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 3. So I replaced the 5 with the 2x and the 3x. Now, you could switch that order. You could put 3x first and then 2x first, or 2x second. It doesn't matter what order you put those two numbers in, as long as you just put them both in. It would work either way. I'll show you in a minute. After you replace that middle thing with those two numbers, what you're going to do, I always have heard it called a wall, so I'm going to draw like a wall, sort of. You don't have to draw the wall, but it might help you to separate the two things that you're talking about. And it goes down the middle of the two things that you plugged in there. You find the greatest common factor between the first two. And the greatest common factor is 2x. And then you divide 2x by both things. When you do that, you're left with x plus 1. Then you find the greatest common factor between the second two things. The greatest common factor between 3x and 3 is 3. Divide out the 3, so I get x plus 1. Now, you know you're doing it correctly when the two things in parentheses are the same. If you don't get the same thing in parentheses, either it doesn't factor, or you did something wrong, like either plugging something in wrong, or the greatest common factor was wrong. Those two things have to be the same. When you write out your answer, the thing that's the same, it's like you factor that out. That's the first part of your answer. And then whatever the greatest common factor was in the two parts, that's the other part of your answer. Okay, so we're going to start off on the next one with multiplying the 5 and the 6, and we get 30. And then we write out the factors of 30. Well, there's 1 and 30. There's 2 and 15. 3 and 10. 5 and 6. Just so many factors here. Okay, we got a positive 30. So we want it to add to give you 13. So we want 3 and 10. Now notice 15 and 2 do give me 13, but I would have to subtract that. Okay? So instead I want the 3 and the 10. Alright, I'm going to replace the 13 with the 3 and the 10. So whatever numbers I pick, I replace the middle with that. And then I just sort of draw my thing to separate it so I can see what's happening. Alright, find the greatest common factor of the first two. So what would be the greatest common factor on that first part? Just a 1, and then also an x, because I have an x in common. So 1x, And I'm left with 5x plus 3. And I find the greatest common factor between the 10x and the 6, which would be 2. And when I divide them both by 2, I get 5x plus 3. Oh, good. Looks like I did something right because I got 5x plus 3 in both of them. That's part of your answer. 5x plus 3 is the first part. And then the second part is the x and the 2. Okay, first step on number 3 is to multiply the 2 and the 7 together. And I get 14. Notice there's a negative there, so if I want to go ahead and write that negative 14, that's okay. That negative is important. That means that the numbers that we look at, we're going to subtract them to get 14 and not add them. Okay? Well, we've got 1 and 14. We've got 2 and 7. That's pretty much it. And I'm subtracting them. And I'm trying to get 13 out of it. So which two numbers do I subtract to give me 13? 1 and 14. Now, alright, so we know we need to subtract them. We're trying to get positive 13. And so the only way to get a positive 13 out of this is for the 14 to be positive. That means the 1's going to be negative. Okay? Now, although most of the time it doesn't matter which one you put first and which one you put second, if you have one that's negative and one that's positive, I would put the negative one first, just because it's easier to deal with the greatest common factor if you put the negative one first. So, and we're going to place the 13 with it. So what I would do is I would put the negative 1x and then the positive 14 minus 7. So 14 minus 1 gives me 13. That's why the 1 had to be negative, and I put it first just because it's easier to work with in the greatest common factor. Alright, after that, find the greatest common factor, which is, what's the greatest common factor there? Just a 1 and also an x. Make sure you don't forget that x when you're doing the greatest common factor. You're left with 2x minus 1. Alright, between the 14 and the 7, 7 is our greatest common factor. Divide them both and we get 2x minus 1. And once we do that, that means 2x minus 1 comes out first. And then whatever's in front of it is our other one. So x plus 7.